we did talk about EA, how EA is going private, right? That's kind of old news now. Everyone knows that EA decided to sell themselves to um, a group of people. Actually, it's not just one entity, just a group involving Saudi Arabia's public investment fund, and also Silver Lake something. I mean, there's a few entities there. So uh they did a leverage buyout of EA, which means now EA is no longer going to be a publicly listed company. It's going to be going private, which has its own implications. And I did mention in that video where I talked about it, how this could lead to a lot of um, complications and also change in the structure of the business and how it could be impacting developers and games alike. But also, it could be a positive thing for EA overall as a company, to further themselves into, you know, um, doing things differently and to come out of the woods with the kind of a hole they have dug themselves in with last few games releasing underperforming really badly. However, I think that will change with Battlefield 6 coming out next week, which is well on its way to be doing really well already. And there's a whole bunch of pre-orders. I think there's like a over like a million or something pre-orders on Battlefield 6, which is insane, even before it releases. So yeah, a lot of people are going to be tuning into that. So I think that could be a saving grace for Electronic Arts, but it's not going to be enough, right? So, and I did mention in my video where I talk about it, I did mention, if you remember, that this could mean that they would be most probably shutting down some of the games that released in the past as a result. And also, this could affect some studios directly more than the others, especially some of the underperforming ones, like BioWare staff worried about studios' future. We did talk about this, and then I said BioWare could be in trouble because they have had so many chances with, their Mass Effect games and uh, Dragon Age games, and they released Anthem, which sucked too. All of those games were really heavy underperformance, right? But they didn't, lay them off. They kept Electronic Arts still kept them around, but now this buyout has happened. Their ownerships have changed. They could be in a little bit of trouble. So BioWare staff obviously worried about studio's future. And what it says, on Monday, it was announced that Electronic Arts is being sold to a group of investors that includes Silver Lake. Yeah, we already know that. This deal is roughly 55 billion and includes 20 billion in debt to be taken on by EA from JP Morgan Chase. With the company going private with the deal and taking on its new debt, it has once again seen many under the EA umbrella start to worry about what it means for the future. From studios to in development games, how aggressive will the changes be in order to pay off that debt? One studio especially worried about the future is BioWare. Yep. In January, the Edmonton based studio saw a number of staff let go after Dragon Age The Veilguard failed to meet expectations set by EA. Yeah. Okay. At the time, a number of employees spoke about the fear of another wave of layoffs. While that hasn't happened, many have continued to work with a feeling that any day could be the last of BioWare as they know it. Fast forward to today, and that feeling has grown tenfold. Yeah, I mean, when you are a studio, a AAA studio nonetheless, who has released one game after another game back to back that has heavily underperformed, it is right to be worried, right? I mean, it started with Mass Effect Andromeda, which did suck a lot, and then they released Anthem, which was a disaster. So much so they had to actually delist the game at one point and refund people who bought the game. And now they released Dragon Age Veilguard, which is supposed to be the comeback for BioWare, but that didn't. While it's not a terrible game, it's not the worst game. It still did not manage to reach the expectations of EA in terms of performance, financial performance. So it's a problem, and they have now released 3 or 4 games back to back that did not perform really well for a AAA studio. So they've been losing money left and right. So it is right for the the developers and the staff of BioWare to be worried about themselves at this point. Multiple sources within the company have spoken under the condition of anonymity about their feelings over the last 24 hours. Of those who spoke, most believe that BioWare will be one of the first studios to see more cuts when the new group takes over. Look at the negativity that came after Dragon Age, said one source. If you felt it was only going to get worse, then you can imagine what some of us think now. The sale of the EA to the investor group isn't expected to close until Q1 fiscal year 2027, so it is a while away. Meanwhile, that studios and employees likely have until at least April 2026 before anything becomes official. That said, there are a few that are already preparing to look for work elsewhere. I mean, this is the beginning of crumbling. It is this is on a downward spiral for BioWare already, it seems. I've been doing it since last year, but I'm making sure I have a portfolio ready and feelers out for other jobs, another current employee said. Kind of feels like a matter of time. When asked for why they feel that way about BioWare specifically, almost all of them pointed out the discussion that happened after Dragon Age the Veilguard's release. The company's headcount was cut to less than 100 people after having more than 200 in 2023. While staff reduction is normal for studios after big game releases, the drastic number has people wondering if EA planned for more cuts at BioWare. Well, makes sense. I mean, like I said, when you have all these games underperforming, how do you maintain big studios like that without making money, right? Essentially, these are all businesses, so you kind of have to start thinking about when and how to, cut down so you can keep operating. Insider Gaming understands that at one point there were talks of EA looking to sell off the studio. Where those ended up, however, is unknown. Regarding where things stand with Mass Effect, they all are working under the assumption that the game is going to come out. At the beginning of the year, only a small team was actively working on it, but more resources had recently started to be put into the game. Okay? We're going to keep working until they tell us we're done. Insider Gaming was told. It's not the healthiest way to live, but as long as the paychecks keep coming, we are not going to just walk away. So I think ultimately this is what's happened to BioWare and why they're not putting out good games. Because they're generally the morale of the staff who are in the company. I think that morale is pretty heavily down by the look of it. The fact that they said that they're going to be working until they were told they're done, and as long as the paychecks keep coming, they're just not going to walk away. That is a very unhealthy mindset to have in a creative workspace. You're essentially making games that needs a lot of creative input, but if you're only doing it for the paychecks to keep coming, and also you're constantly worried about getting laid off, that's not healthy, and that's going to reflect in the games, because you're not in a free environment to be able to get your creative juices flowing, and to put that creativity to good use, to have it reflect in the game. Which is why Veilguard, while it was not a terrible game, it just fell short, and making a new Mass Effect game is probably the last resort to save themselves. But even with that game, if they're not going to be able to put their 100% into it in terms of creativity and making sure that the game is good, not just making a game for the sake of getting money for it, you're just not going to make a good game, because the gaming industry is very competitive, and if you're not going to make the best of it, you're just not going to people just not going to pay it. It doesn't matter if it comes from a legendary studio like BioWare, who made good games once. It doesn't matter anymore. If you're gonna make a shit game, people will call it out, and they're just not gonna make it. They're not gonna play it. So I think that's ultimately what's happened with BioWare, and it's such a sad situation to be in. And I think the staff cuts that are waiting to happen for BioWare is kind of inevitable, and this same would be true across many other EA studios over the next couple of years. Um, but it is the sad reality of this industry, especially after a huge acquisition like this happens. Like I said, the staff cuts are inevitable and they will happen. There will be restructuring, heavy restructuring probably, and probably some games gonna get cancelled. We don't know. Um, but they're gonna have to make back that $20 billion to pay back to JP Morgan Chase as soon as possible, right? So otherwise it'll be all out of EA's collateral. So yeah, it's a terrible situation to be in, but it's the reality. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I would expect more and more of these kind of news to be popping up in the next couple of months and possibly into the next year. We'll hear more about it, but that's just how it's going to be, unfortunately.